You are at Lake Rant, where I rant about whatever my $15 a month plus patrons want me to rant about. You can get one of these by being one of those. This one is for Ian, who says, rant about your willingness to change any opinion you've ever had about an anime. I find I have a hard time finding flaws in old favorites because of the impact they had on my life. I don't want to taint the memories. Meanwhile, you seem capable of changing your stance on any series at a moment's notice, and it doesn't really have that much effect on you. I could realistically see a decade from now saying that you don't really care for K-On! Anymore or Ava just because your tastes may have changed in that time. It's possible. Nothing's impossible. But, I mean, the way I see it is like, I've grown a lot. A lot of the stuff that I liked when I was young is just bad. So it's like, it's easy to look back on, say, like, the first show I ever remember being into was Power Rangers as a kid. And I caught an episode of Power Rangers flipping through the channels one day, the American original season Power Rangers. And it's so fucking bad. Like, the acting is terrible, the sets are terrible, the editing's terrible, just everything about it is like, wow. You'd have to be a child to be entertained by this, So it's like, just seeing things like that, I'm not going to be able to convince myself that this thing is still good or still entertaining in the face of having discovered things that are so much better. It's like, for instance, there were years where I considered, like, Bakano to be my favorite anime. Like, outright top 5, if not number 1. It was one of my favorites because I just loved all the concepts in it, the structure, the characters, the artwork and animation. And it's like, that show came out back in 2007. I probably watched it a few times between like 2008 and 2010. And, I didn't have the same eye for visuals now that I do back then. Like, I think I thought that show was like one of the best looking anime I had seen. Looking back on it, it's actually a lot more inconsistent. There are some great fight scenes. There is some excellent animation. But the artwork is not always, perfectly on model or anything like that. It's not extremely complex. They're not always showing crazy backgrounds or anything. Like, it looks good, but it's not the same as it was back then. And I've seen stuff that's so much better now just through force of watching more shit. And I can, detect how the plot construction, there's a lot of kind of wasting time in the script, like I had thought of it as tight because of the fact that it's so, the construction kind of all loops in on itself. And it's like the more you watch of it, the more you understand the situation. But if you rewatch the show enough times, you kind of can parse out like what stuff is unnecessary information. And there are parts of the show that are just kind of slow and boring, and when you rewatch it, knowing what stuff is important, those slow and boring parts hit you even harder. So it's just like, part of it is whether these shows really can hold up. Part of it is, me changing as a person and my taste changing. But a lot of my taste changing is just learning about better things. Just, like, when I was 3 and I was watching Power Rangers, there was nothing to compare it to, And there's plenty of stuff that I've loved throughout my life that I still love. I still love watching classic Pokemon, I still think Gen 1 Pokemon, the original TV show, holds up. It's still entertaining, even dubbed. It's a lot of fun. The music is really great. The design work is great. The color work is great. The pacing of every episode is really tight. The script is funny. The voice acting is funny. I think Pokemon, like, surprisingly holds up. So it's like, there's plenty of stuff from my past I still like. Plenty of stuff that, that maybe I've come to dislike, but it's always just a matter of, hey, I've seen something that did this same thing better, or, this holds up better than I expected, or there was something I didn't recognize about it the first time. Obviously in a case like Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex that I always use as my example, I just didn't get it. I didn't get what was interesting about the deeper themes of the show until at a point in my life where I was just much more interested in sci-fi and technology and futurism and the possibilities of what could happen. And then seeing a show that's sort of like speculative fiction in a way. It's presenting an idea of what things could be like in the semi-near future. And that was way more interesting to me at a time when I had a better understanding of, the world I actually live in and where it's heading towards in the future. So, I would already say that I don't know if I would enjoy K-On! As much now as I did last time I watched it back when I did that video series, because my values definitely have shifted since then on like what I want from a show, um, and just having seen shows that like after watching Sangatsu no Lion, for instance, like that show is so amazing at so many things that I'd never really seen in a show before, particularly like the focus on much older characters who have long storied lives and the particular details of just the way people live that is left out of so much anime. And, seeing something like that, it's kind of like, wow, now everything else has to compare to this. So everything else might go down a point just because this is so strong. Or rewatching Ava and finding more to like about it than I even had before, partly again because I got older and I could relate to the older characters better, whereas when I was younger, I did not relate to them at all. So some shows continue to reveal new depth to you, and some you kind of hit a stopping point and you think, okay, well, there's still a lot here, but is there as much here as there is in this other thing that maybe you watched at the same time, but you've continued to have new appreciation for, versus an older thing that you feel like you already exhausted that out of. Um, not to say that something great can't just be enjoyed just to see it all over again. I don't think I've really wrung much extra out of Ponyo since the very first time I saw it, but I've enjoyed it equally every single time just because it's such an explosion of joy. So yeah, my willingness to do it is, I guess, just out of honesty. It's just like I don't want to lie to myself and pretend I like something I don't, and then end up with this confusing situation where I'm trying to justify why I still think this old show is good, even though I've watched all this other shit that's so much better. Um, it's like I'd rather. I don't want to let my emotions get in the way of making rational decisions, I guess. And it's not that I don't ever make emotional decisions, and I do feel bad. Like if a show that I've put a lot of like my heart into and like feel like it represents me on some level, if I start to feel like myself fading away from that, I might feel some sadness. But it's kind of like, well, I already got what I needed to get out of it. I don't need to cling to this forever. It's like a hoarder mentality almost, when you do that. Like, I grew up in a house where nothing ever really got thrown away, where I would like hang on to every little thing because I thought it was all important. And then you just end up with these giant boxes of bullshit that you're like, why do I have all this crap? I don't care about any of it. I don't look at it. I just felt like I needed to keep all this stuff. And then you just get rid of it all. So I guess that's the metaphor I'm going with.